Hey, happy Friday. Welcome to CPG Vibes number 192. 8 weeks away, assuming we do an episode every 8 weeks or every week for the next 8 weeks, to number 200. Gavin, what's happening?
Man, I am doing good. Nothing too much happening, as I'm sure a lot of folks are across the United States right now, and more importantly, probably the central mid America and South. We're preparing for a huge storm.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked a little bit before we went on the air. Gavin and I are both in North Carolina, and the forecast has changed dramatically from about, I don't know, 96 hours ago. It was a foot plus of snow, and now it's just going to be primarily an ice event, which is actually worse for us because we're not prepared in the South for anything like that. So, should be interesting. But I'm ready. I'm prepared to be without power. I've got blankets. My backup plan is to camp out my Tesla. I'm going to stay warm one way or the other. So,
Yeah, it's going to be quite an experience. I think we're projected for like an inch of ice or freezing rain on top of sleet. And then I think Monday into Tuesday, we're getting more polar vortex, high of 11. So we're definitely going to be in the thick of it, but we're prepared as much as we can be anyways. We've got a small little generator that we're have at the ready just in case we do lose power. But yeah, it's gonna be wild. There's Kentucky, I think, is projected for like 20 inches of snow. It's gonna obviously ruin distribution. Grocery stores have been smoked the last handful of days as people are preparing. Gonna be pretty crazy. As people are probably unaware that aren't from the South or the mid South, we don't have salt trucks down here. We don't have snow plows down
plows. Yeah.
here. So that's the tricky thing.
Yeah.
Wade, I think you grew up in Ohio. I grew up in Michigan.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah. I said, it's funny. I told somebody the other day, it's like, here, this is catastrophic. In Ohio, Michigan, it's just a weekend in January. You know what I mean? It's like no
yeah,
big deal. But no, it's cool. We're going to be bringing our guest, Jomaree Pinkard, here shortly. As a reminder, if you're joining us for the first time or it's been a minute, comment in the chat, any questions, what's on your mind, or any just comments in general. We'd love to hear from you, see from you, and we'll throw those out there. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. Like, subscribe, you know the drill. Gavin, what else do we need to get to before we bring in our guest?
I think that's it. Let's bring
Cool.
let's bring him on.
All right, cool. Here he is. Welcome.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's going on?
Listen, the big question you got to ask yourself for this snowstorm is: do you have sleds for the kids? Yes, you too, Gavin.
You know, you know what?
13-month-old twins. Do you
What-
have sleds? Is
What's
that the question we need to answer?
What's funny is people bought sleds, and now there's not going to be, theoretically won't be much snow for them to sled. It's just be ice.
It'll be slippery though.
Ooh,
Definitely gonna be slippery.
maybe just cardboard boxes then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got plenty of cardboard boxes.
Excellent.
Thank
Well,
you for having me on the show. Thank you, Gavin.
we yeah, it's a pleasure to have you, and certainly we can introduce you, but we'd love you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Wow. Okay. Where do I start? The long version or the short version? No, the short version. Wow. I'm a New York native, and been in the CPG industry since this is CPG Fives for the last 12, 13 years or so. Got my kind of like teeth wet building and operating our company, the Hella Cocktail Company that you see in the background. We make there a ton of products, mixers, bitters and sodas and things like that. And we like to think that we kind of re-energize some of the cocktail speakeasy movements from the CPG standpoint way back in the time machine then. And since then, I think my North Star has continued to be to continue opening doors for other entrepreneurs and founders of color, mainly, and just trying to educate and tell people kind of about my experience, my story, and how things work.
Awesome.
Love that. Well, on that note, why don't you elaborate there a little bit on that, on the second part of that statement of how you are helping open doors for those younger entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, these days, I think, circa 2020, when right before COVID began, myself and a few of the other co-founders of Included CPG, check it out if you want on the website. I think Wade just threw it in the chat. Thought that we were in these we think it was winter. I think it was Winter Fancy Food Show, right before everything closed down, and myself and a few other people were in different booths around the show, and kept walking past each other, but didn't recognize or know each other. We knew that each other existed, but didn't know each other by name or by, by career. And so a few of us got together and said, what if there was a space that felt like you could be vulnerable about what the issues that you're going through are? And I think a lot of those communities exist today, naturally, startup CPG, things like that are great. But back then it felt like, I wish I knew the answer to a question, and I wish I knew which door to open, or which person I could speak to about X or Y. And so we said, you know what, let's create a space. And then all of a sudden, in rapid formation, COVID happened. Right? And when COVID happened, we just got a bunch of 20 or 30 entrepreneurs into a virtual room, and organically they just let the conversation play out. And what we realized really quickly was a few things. One, people really desired like a vulnerable, safe space to ask silly questions, right? Because when you're talking to your team, it feels like you may not be able to lower that guard down. Like you should have all the answers as a leader. And so that we realized that we wanted the leaders, the founders and the entrepreneurs of the companies to be the kind of founding members and who the audience was for. Even third-party providers, brokers, distributors, but to be the leader was different than to be who everyone else, not that everyone else doesn't matter, but like you couldn't let that guard down. So a safe, vulnerable space was super important. That's what kind of one of the pillars are still today. But the other one was that like, there are so many gatekeepers that like you don't know how to access them. You don't know what the right KPI that someone's looking for. You don't know the right buyer here, the right distributor partner over there, who does food service, right? The system is so, as you guys know, so complex, right? But yet so simple. And so if you don't have any people to talk to about those things, it's really hard to navigate. And so I think Included was born out of creating a space where you can actually have an open dialogue about how to navigate the food and beverage industry at large.
Yeah, I think that's what we talk about a lot on this podcast is, this is sometimes it's a very simple industry, but then as you scale, it becomes increasingly more complicated. Like I think some focus on retail, and then you just kind of hit the nail on the head. There's also these food service or alternative channels that you can also pursue that might be actually a better fit for your brand early on, or as you mature and that. But a lot of again, like I think a lot of founders, they become like tunnel vision, like they have their sights set on a specific retailer, or they want to be in all the doors all at once. And as you scale, like that becomes increasingly expensive. What are some of those tougher conversations you have with those founders? Is it a lot of like, hey, you're gonna go through this, and there's gonna be
Yeah.
a lot of hurdles, or do you try to like mitigate some of that stuff?
It's kind of all of the above, because what we all know about the industry is that everyone's on their own journey and everyone's coming from a different like anchor in the ground, right? Different starting point. And so depending on where people, we blanket, courses and digital frameworks around, what the traditional rights and wrongs are, but we know those are going to have nuances kind of embedded inside of them. And so, yes, you do have those conversations where you're saying, go deep, don't go wide. Not your category doesn't go wide early. It doesn't make sense, right? When you think about something like beer, right? It's like, you're in Chicago, it's Goose Island. Like that's what it is because they try to go wide with AB. It's really tough, right? It's a different animal. And so you try to give case studies of like things that you like, things that things that other that founders are familiar with, and try to like tie that through line to make it make sense. In other cases, it's one-to-one, hand-to-hand, like therapy sessions, right? Like, I know that vendor didn't pay you, but here's how you should think about that idea at large versus the one-off, right? So we always try to like zoom out and say like, what's the process or the framework they should be thinking about for X or Y, Z problem or opportunity versus like, you can't put out every single fire for every person or every company, but you can create processes and systems and ideologies and frameworks that like are tried and true within limitations, right? So most of the content and dialogue that we try to have in those spaces are around frameworks and how to win, how to do that, and how others have won, loss, or draw.
Yes. We kind of jumped right in the middle of the pool, and I want to go there for a second, but I want to welcome Rich and Kenny, and I missed somebody else up here, but thanks for joining us today. You're the background with Hella and how you got there. Talk a little bit about your background and why you decided to get into what the backstory was in the foundation of Hella.
Yeah, it's a great question. The short version, I'll give you the long version, but the short version is, my co-founders, Eddie, Simeon, and Tobin Ludwig, trapped me in a garage and said, "You're going to do this project with us." So you think about 3 kids in a garage mentality, in the tech space mostly, but it happened to us in the CPG space. And at that time, we were only focused on cocktail bitters. So we're not from the industry, right? We say, we're going to find the most niche product in the most niche category circa 2012, and we're going to focus on that, right? So like we actually were just hobbyists, right? We're the kind of guys that made our own homemade pizza and then watched the game and try to one-up each other in a game cocktail. And so Hella was born out of friendship, first and foremost, and then secondly, around experimentation, right? Like just trying to fit into the cocktail zeitgeist and seeing where you fit, because we're still the kind of guys that go to the bar, hang out, but like we don't necessarily do the handlebar march stick. It's not that it's bad, but like we don't care about the suspenders. We want to fit in a cocktail bar that actually makes a great cocktail, but be well received. And like it's cool, right? If we're going to pay $12 for that drink. And so I think our inspiration was, how do we fit? Where do we belong in this space? And like if we don't feel like we belong, then we must build our own part of the table. And at that time, the bitters was something that was very hobbyist, and we can control the elements for it. We can control the maturation, the 30-day process of it. We can control the infusion of what kind of spices and herbs we like to put in cocktail bitters. And for the user that don't know, cocktail bitters are a flavorful infusion of bitter spice and bitter root, fruit and bitter root. And so we can do that stuff by ourselves, right? And so as a hobby brand, it was not built around KPIs. It was not built around investors. It wasn't built around retail distribution or velocity. It was built around none of those things. And I think it was a blessing in disguise because we never built the business in that design, right? The business was built out of our love for experimentation, for showing up, for being present, for building community. And so early days, we didn't even know what retail distribution looked like. We just knew that they didn't take 12 packs, right? That was a lot for a bar. It was like, that doesn't work. And so once we discovered like, man, 12 or 6 packs for bitters is a big investment. I mean, back then that was like, 12 bottles of bitters must have been $844, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like a nice investment. No, that was 12 was 144, right? So a case was 144, and you'd buy like, people would buy like 3 or 4 flavors. It was like a $600, $700, $800 investment from a retail store. It's like, wow, that's a lot, right? And so we said, okay, how do we break this down? Okay, we went to 6-pack cases, then we went to specialty stores, right? We're like, okay, who buys this stuff? We can't get the Southern Glazers yet or RNDC. We're not that big. So how do we actually turn this into an actual business? And so we slowly realized that there were specialty stores back then that were very small and few in between that sold, specialty chocolates and specialty salts and specialty flours. And we would intersect our place in those markets where they were doing that. And that's where bartenders and bar managers shop. And we said, light bulb moment. These are all around the country. We don't have to like do the whole go wide thing too early. We need to focus on the tribe, the cocktail culture tribe. And so that's what we did for the next 2012 to 2015, 2016. We were hobbyists, only focusing on education and that tribe and figuring out where to intersect. And so the second example of specialty stores for us was, we're not going to be able to get into UNFI or the big guys. Like no one's going to pick us up that early on the brand side. So what we did was took a page out of the playbook from Seth Goldman. And we said, okay, he went cheese distributors. I was like, that's interesting. Could we go home and luxury specialty goods stores? And so we rung the bells of Sur La Table, West Elm, Crate and Barrel, Restoration Hardware. Like these are all the stores that actually gave us cachet, credibility, and national recognition in like 2013, 2014. And so we came around the bend and then haloed on to bartenders, bar managers, because they would go and get their bar accoutrement, the nice decanter at home, and say, wait a second, what is this product doing here? And so like we just kind of reverse engineered a different way to think about how to go to market back then. And that kind of set the tone for our price point, our premium nature, the awareness focus. And so like we built our brand out of that moment, and like we've never stopped like thinking through that lens as how we show up in the world.
That's fascinating. So you guys, I want to probably slow down, but like, did you guys take any outside investment in those early years?
No. So because we didn't have an investor, we didn't have any KPIs, we weren't tracking towards anything. It was like, can we, build enough inventory to satisfy the immediate demand and then reload, right? And so we just took the net proceeds every time. And for, good for us at that time. Again, we didn't know CPG traditional margins in the 30s and 40s when you start. Bitters has like a 70, 80 margin, right? Gross on the top. So we're like, I'm a drug dealer, right? This is my mind. We were like, oh shit, this is what alcohol companies do. This is why they make so much damn money and why they advertise over the place. And so once we realized that, we knew we weren't at scale yet. So we weren't making money, we weren't losing money. And so we said, okay, we're not going to pay ourselves. We're just going to take that $800, make 2 batches, and that's $1,600 if we have the demand. And we did that for, I want to say, 3 years. And by that time, in 3 years, by the time it was 2015, I want to say we were like high six figures by just rinsing and repeating, right? And so by the time we went to like go look for money, it was like, well, we're making money. We don't need it. We'd like it so we can do more of it. But like we can do this playbook all the time because there's no one else that owns the company or maybe even cares about the category yet, right? It wasn't what we see now. It was old neon green cocktail mixes. One bitters brand in the store was like, that's interesting competition to play on. And so like we didn't rush to traditional markets. We just let the industry and the insights and the customer, most importantly, tell us where we should show up next.
So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you guys got a lot of really good feedback from the specialty bartenders and specialty stores and things like that. When did you guys know that, or what was the next outlet after the Crate and Barrels and all that?
Yeah, I think after that, so we got specialty retail, we parallel path that with like, home luxury goods. And then I think went more traditional on-premise liquor distributors. And then at the same time, we would try to break the Whole Foods like mixer shelf in like the Northeast, right? And so in doing that, we partnered with an old cool dude named Jim Pickett who passed away a bunch of years ago. But he had this distribution platform called Gotham Artisanal. And he was only doing a cocktail accoutrement. And so the Northeast Whole Foods had this set that had all those things in it. And so we like went there and was like, okay, we can like work this system and figure out, do we even have a product market fit within traditional retail? And so we did that for, I want to say 1 or 2 years to like show ourselves and prove ourselves, not only to ourselves, but also to the industry that this could be a bigger business. And we did the same thing on the kind of pure play liquor distribution side, right? And so we partnered with Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits in their premium portfolio that sold the premium parts of the alcohol. Because we already said, okay, we have the awareness, we have the bartender buy-in at that level of awareness. Let's go partner with the bigger brands that have that same cachet. And so when we combine our drink or cocktail programs, they start to make sense to the consumer, right? And so we use that billboard to like push retail and like, along with the home luxury, it told us a kind of accessible yet educational, hospitable, but premium story.
Mm. And you also touched on something where you said you weren't paying yourselves. When were you guys finally able to do that? And then also, did you guys have full-time jobs as you were building this?
Yeah, we did. So we started paying ourselves in 2016 and one person went at a time, right? So it wasn't like everyone went at the same time. I was a consultant for the NFL from 2010 until then. Tobin was a bartender at this amazing bar. Oh man, he's gonna kill me for forgetting it because we used to go there all the time. There was one called Fedora, but that wasn't the first one. There was one more before Fedora. And he would like crack that. I mean, he was our maker. And so he would go and make the batches of bitters early in the morning after he did a 4 a.m. shift. I mean, it was crazy. And then Eddie worked at Martha Stewart and a few other places doing kind of digital design and media. Mm-hmm. And so the three of us kind of came from different work streams in our normal careers. And so when we got together, it was like, oh, you're the maker, you're the business guy, you're mission control. Like you're going to put it all together. And so like naturally, our strides took their own formation. And like, it was like, it was symbiotic and almost kismet.
Yeah. I'm now starting to understand how and why you have this other side of you with, you guys are obviously very hands-on. You're dealing with every aspect of business. You probably took a lot of lashings, but a lot of learnings all at the same time. And I can see how all of your learnings just in that short three or 4 years before you started going into more retail, how much you learned and how much you can obviously share with other younger entrepreneurs and what to look out for. So I commend you on that. That's pretty fascinating. All while juggling, another job at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, we were hustlers.
Nice.
Yeah, I remember wearing we've all worn all the hats, and I thought if we're going to do this and we're going to get really serious about it in 2016, 17, put our business hats on for real, we better wear all the hats so that we know what it costs, takes the time amount that something actually, you may not realize those things, but like go merchandise, like jack the pallet, like drive the truck, like drive the forklift, wrap the boxes, like shrink, like all the things that happen, from raw material to procurement all the way through to like selling the product at a demo, like get it done. Right. And so I think that weaponizes us in a different way that like you couldn't shortchange us on like our optimization around the system itself. Right. Even though we didn't come from it, we learned it in real time. It was super fun and hard as shit. And I couldn't do it again. Too old.
Well, I want to acknowledge Robert. Robert's joined us, and a couple of questions for him. One, I think he's being a little silly about being trapped in the garage, if it was a scary garage or flat screen and bar fridge. But he asked about hotel chains, high-end hotel customers, assuming you had some of those as you first got started. There's, the different areas you were in.
Yeah, back then, I don't think we had any. I think we had like the Andaz Hotel, which was cool. We had like the Knickerbocker Hotel on 34th Street. We had a few. Those were inbound because we didn't have a sales team. So like what we were doing intentionally was what I described, and everything else that was inbound was great to have. We also had like a D2C early days platform on like Fab, and like way before all the Shopifys and things like that came on board. We had a few things like that. So, but anything that came that you might have seen in the wild was because we were having inbounds at the same time, because I think the cachet of the brand was making a little bit noise in the speakeasy and the cocktail culture at that time. So we had a lot of hotels and a lot of places. We just didn't know like how to manage them at the time, right? It's like, we'll ship it, but we don't know what else to do with that after that.
Yeah, and so obviously started in bitters. We kind of walked through and the growth to where you left off or where we left off. Your portfolio today is quite different, right? And it's expanded. You're in multiple categories. So, what was the category you got into after bitters? The next iteration of Hella.
Yeah, it's a good question. So when we made the bitters, we often think about whether or not we made a genius or a terrible mistake. Even to today, we don't know the answer. We will never know the answer. But when we were thinking about the next productization, what we were doing was listening to the customers. And our bartender friends were like, we hate these mixes that we got to make, or the Bloody Mary super hard to be consistent. And so we just kept listening and saying, okay, we should either make a mixer brand so that we can lean into one, the distribution platform, but two, like our community of things who are asking for something that's of better quality. Because once you make bitters and you learn how to macerate something and procure spices and like not cut corners, everyone figures like everything you can do is going to come in that vein, which is accurate. So that was one path that we thought about, and the other was Amaro. We were like, should we do it Amaro? And then what we realized about our company and ourselves is we always are super early to the market, which is a gift and a curse. Right. So we don't win usually on early adopter. And so like sometimes we get left in the dust, and that's cool. But we know we'll be cracking the door open and say, Amaro, damn, that's a whole TTB situation. Those are liquor licenses, it's a different distribution animal. We played it safe. We went the mixer route, right? Because that's what everyone was asking for, these two ideas. And so we already have the footprint here and the framework. We know what we're doing. Let's not risk it. Right. And so again, we don't know if we missed the boat because we knew Amaros were coming. And they came, right? Campari and Aperol spritzes and all that is the wave today. But like back then, think 2015, 16, this is what we were thinking about intentionally. And so we went into the mixer route because we knew we could make a great product, and we knew that there was demand for it that was better than what was on the shelf. And so we went on that journey for a few years, and it was great. Like we were relatively right, in the space, but we also realized that the consumer had a different expectation or understanding and tradition of like what that looked like. And so we had to crack the whip on like, no, this is better. And that was a hard, we still have the product and it still does great, but it's still a hard mission to crack when everything else on the shelf is like neon green, right? It's still a hard thing. And it's priced at what we would call value, right? And so that's a tough category that we've been in. And then in 2018, we said, okay, that was nice. That was a quick run, but we can see something else. And in the vein of Amaros, we were like, we need to create our own spritz, our own bubbled soda, because that's where we were going. And that's what we drank. We took our own bitters, put them in soda water. It's an old bartender's trade secret. They all do it when no one's drinking. And so we're like, wait a minute, we should just bottle our own shit. Like this doesn't make sense. And when we do all the demos, we did 1,000 demos in 2018, right? We did demos everywhere. And everyone was like, and that's how we served it. They were like, why don't you make that? And we're like, yes, we've been thinking about that for a long time. But to the point about not having assets and, investment and things like that, we didn't have the capital to build the MOQs on that on the way that we built everything else, which was our own making. We controlled that process for a long time. Once you, as you already know here, once you get into that, canned business, you want carbonation, you want this, you want that, it's a different landscape. And so we said, okay, now we have to go figure out how to fundraise against this initiative to make this go, because it's a big idea in our minds. And we thought it was delicious, and we thought no one else was doing carbonated beverages like this. And so that became the last kind of component of the portfolio that we were like, if this doesn't work, like, we give up. But we believe in kind of the botanical benefits of bitters and soda and bitters in general. And so, like, let's just keep punching that clock.
That's amazing. So what, I guess just keep going on this path. What were those MLQs that you guys needed to hit to start making the product, and how many SKUs did you guys launch with?
Yeah, so we it's so funny. We did one, like, one item that we were calling a spritz, and it had some sugar in it. And we were thinking zero sugar or sugar. We didn't know which one to do. We were like, they both taste great. One tastes just like an Aperol spritz, but no alcohol, right? So we're thinking two things at the same time. We're early to NA, like super early, and we're like trying to crack a code on a new category. Okay, we're not well, right? We're like, shit, both of these things at the same time are like exponentially and almost impossible to do. And so we said, let's do not NA, but do we do sugar or no sugar in this bitters and soda idea? And so we went back and forth and we said, let's create both. Let's create a classic dry aromatic with no sugar, and then a spritz that has a little bit of sugar. Same exact formula. One has sugar, one don't. They taste completely different, right? And so we launched those two first, and immediately after, we had some traction. We launched 3 more flavors: a ginger, turmeric, a lemon lime, and a grapefruit. Right, and those are all zero sugar, because we realized, like, you know what, we're aficionados in this bitter space. Let's not mess up what bitters is about, right? And try to be too many things to too many people. And so we kind of landed the world in zero sugar bitters and soda products. Now we have 2 because COVID hit right after we launched. We launched 2020 COVID. Like, no, because none of our strategy could work. We were doing 2,000 demos by then a year. And we're like, shit, we're in Total Wine & More, we're in Whole Foods, we're in all our up and down the streets accounts, and we can't go to any of them. So what the hell are we going to do? And so we sunset the last 3 that we brought to market, just because it didn't make sense from an MLQ production and getting the market standpoint. And the other 2 has survived ever since.
Wow. And then for those 2 SKUs that survived, or that you launched with, who was the anchor that did that? Was that a distributor, and then or was that a specific retailer?
It was a specific retailer. So we had 2 arms. We have our traditional kind of like, actually we have like 3 arms. So we have our traditional unified KHE, back then it was DPI framework. Then we had our food service, which would include, Southern Glazers, wine and spirits type things. And then we had like strategic partners, right? Like TGI Fridays or some of the cinemas. And we went to each one and said, okay, who's our anchor here? Whole Foods was our anchor in traditional, retail. We had a few accounts from Southern and Glazers that were like our anchors in food service. And then we had some like Cineplexes and things like that were anchors for the kind of true on-premise, like get the wave, make it look shiny and cool. And they were kind of the anchors that sat in that seat with us and said, we're going to do this. And I'll never forget, I was at BevNet I think it was 2019. I've been trying to chase. Shout out to George James. I was trying to chase George James down for a minute. I was like, George, I'm going to find you, brother. And I found him at BevNet, and I was like, all right, here it is, buddy. Here you go. That's what we were talking about. He was like, that's money in the bank. And I was like, I told you. So it was. I appreciate him for that, because ever since it's been a good business with Whole Foods, and I think we knew that our customer was there. Right? We had done so much research and so much work in the field for so many years. We knew who was buying our stuff and kind of at what price point they were willing to pay. And like, it's been pretty cool to know like that consumer still exists, even if we're not in all the accounts all around the country. Like the consumer still sits there and they're like, where is it? And if we're ever out of stock, they're like, where can I buy it online? And so it's cool to know that like someone always wants a product and there's a home for it, even if it's not, Olipop.
So this is great, and I don't know if you've seen some of the comments I've thrown up here. Mark says, really impressive, Jomaree, hearing the growth path it took to get to where you are now is awesome. Kenny says it's a great story and an even better product. So that path, obviously we know about the 3 founders or co-founders. Talk a little bit about not coming from outside the CPG world, at what point did you start to involve service providers, whether it's a broker or internal sales reps, or when did you start down that path? And being that you were in all these different channels with, you had food service, you had on premise, you had traditional grocery, at what point did you engage someone else, and how did that play out?
I'd say overall, way too late. But because we didn't know anything, we didn't know like these things existed, and like, yours truly just did all the biz dev. I was like, I'll take all the calls. And I lived in the air for 4 or 5 years. I lived in the sky. People were like, where do you live? I was like, I don't really know. We're about to touch down in Toledo.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. Is like,
you know what I mean?
Pre-COVID, you were flying like every salesperson was flying everywhere.
Was like, and we only had salespersons of one, right? So like wherever you're trying to get to on all those channels, I'm like, where do I show up next? But it was awesome. It was crazy. It was a great journey. But we started to engage in 2016 or 17. We had our first 3 brand ambassadors that helped us start doing, like, delivering the demos that we have been doing up to that moment, and they became kind of like, it was Alicia, Fabiana, and Claudia Smith became like our mirrors. Like, are we doing this right? Like, this, you're out in the field now with us. Like, are we talking nonsense, or is it real? And so the feedback loop from them became invaluable, because we were able to then, the first thing we did was build out our own vertical demo team, right? So we were like, actually, these things work. When people taste them, they engage. Like, we knew Tasty Lips, we get the idea, but like trying to hire people to do it that don't know the brand, for us, it was about nuance in our brand, and what bitters are, and like, what's a bitters and soda. So we knew we couldn't just hire anyone to tell those stories. So we hired people, and Alicia Hollinger actually built out our vertically integrated sales team. I think we were at the height of hell. I think we were at like 19 people in like 13 states, just like, doing demos, and the best demo specialists turned into sales reps and like rode along with our liquor distributors and went to on-premise accounts. It was a nice machine that, again, we didn't know the designs. We were building something that just felt bespoke to us, but I'm sure everyone does it. And then I think one day we were at, I don't know, one of the shows, and I see Bill Weiland, and he's raving about bitters. And I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Who is this guy?
I don't know. Bill Weiland is the CEO of Presence, or was the CEO of Presence at the time.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. Again, me coming from Asia, I'm like, this guy, that's cool. Like, all right, dude, talk that shit, right? And then I was like, oh, Bill's super eccentric, and then we became cool, and went over his house and did all this stuff, and he was like vetting us, and I was like, Bill, like, it's all good. Like, I don't know the space, so this gatekeep big. I'm like, you want to hang or not? You want to play ping pong or no? Right? And so we got on well, and they started to represent us, and that whole PMI team was pretty cool and really helpful in getting us into the kind of rest of market, with not only the bitters and soda, but the mixers and the bitters and things like that, where it made sense for the right retailer. And that was a cool relationship for a few years that we had with PMI. But they were the first kind of like proper third-party service provider that we brought on within the system that wasn't like a label maker. Shout out to Century Label. Yeah.
I got a couple questions, but this kind of goes on the path with the service providers, and you mentioned TGI Fridays earlier, and some other these unique outlets that a lot of founders probably don't think about, or don't know how to interact with. So like, using that TGI Fridays example, like, I'm assuming I know what the answer is. You initiated that conversation. How did that transpire, and what made you think of those guys?
Yeah, man, how did that one happen? So I don't know exactly how that one happened, but I knew how most of them happened. What I would do, and again, this is probably like, again, circa 2017, 18, 16, somewhere in there, when I was thinking through brand associations, which is super important to me as we built our brand, was like, who are the associative properties? When we forget the retailer for a second, how do we want our brand to show up in the world, right? Because we're not big enough to pay for the ad. So how do we get you sticky on a menu, and an airline, and a hotel? And so what I started to do was really just triangulate my personal network and ask our team to do the same thing. It was like, okay, here are the 20 accounts that we think about when we think about this credibility in, chain at airline space, right? Or hotel at blank space. Let's LinkedIn. Let's LinkedIn that place and see who we know. And slowly I would like ping a friend and be like, do you know someone? So you're like 3 days of great. Send an intro. I don't care if you spoke to them 20 years ago. Make it happen. And so you'd be surprised that the people that are closest to you have the hardest time helping you. The people that are furthest away are like, I got nothing to lose. Plus, I want to speak to so-and-so. I haven't talked to them forever. It's a great entryway. And so that paid spades like nobody's business. I think this is, again, all before people really cared about LinkedIn. It was all optimized, right? It was like everyone answered their LinkedIn's back then, right? So it really worked. And a lot of the relationships that we built came because of 1 degree or 2 degree or 3 degrees of separation, but just a simple ask of like, we got this product, like, are you guys looking for something? And it wasn't like over the top. We're not super cool. We're not like, that wasn't the entree. It was like, we have a product that we know you have one of in your cabinet, that you have one of on the menu, you've had it for 20 years. Would you like something different? That's kind of co-signed by the bartenders that you're actually there, because we are your bartenders that are doing the work at your facility or at your chain or at your restaurant. We are their favorite bidders because we're part of their community, because we've been teaching them about the process for years. They like us. They have them in their home cabinet, I guarantee you, but they're not authorized by your chain. Could you simply authorize it so they can buy it? And that started to like take shape and form and bringing us to the food and beverage manager, right? Because they say, well, I can't do it, but here's a food and beverage manager. Like, I heard of your brand at the so-and-so event. It was like, so that little kind of thing happens. And as you guys know, we all are rotating in the system, right? If you are a buyer here at Fridays, you might go to, our buyer at Fridays is now actually in real time at Dave & Buster's. And they was like, Jomaree, Dave & Buster's, go. And I was like, yes. But it's because the community has been built and we've been connected, and like, it's natural. It's not fake. We're not trying to sell. We're just trying to be human and make sure that there's something that if you need it, we have it. If we don't, we'll recommend you someone else. We kind of like using the Zappos model too. Like, if we don't have it, like, go to so-and-so, because we help them think through their business plan when they launch. And that's cool too,
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Wade and I kind of talk about this all the time, but relationships matter. And your buyer today, wherever they're at, could be a VP in 3 years or 4 years at another retailer, and that's another outlet that you can potentially have. And obviously always be respectful and
Yeah.
personable
For
and all that
us,
kind of stuff.
Yeah, for us, we think because, again, not that if you're from the space it's different, but we think about the humanness. Like when we came in this business, it wasn't about dollars and cents. It wasn't about velocity. It wasn't about any of those things. It was about like, can you make an authentic connection in the things that we like to do? We just wanted to be included in the tribe of drinking and having a good time. And so like, we don't treat every person that we interacted with the same like thought process, like we're missing the boat, right? And so we like think through like, okay, you're a buyer today, but like, who are you as a human, right? Like, what are you trying to do with yourself so that like, if we help you win, you win. Like, if you help us win, something happens for you in the real world, right? Outside of your, the machine that we're in. And like, we don't want to get you fired, right? So tell us what the edge is for you so that we know where the sandbox is, right? Because we can sell it. Our goal is to last, right? Not to exit per se, or to have a super crazy number that's on the revenue top. It's to like maybe hand down to our kids. When we look at our sector of the industry, when you look at your liquor cabinets, the brands over there are 100 years old, right? So we're thinking about a 100-year commitment of like, where are we going? So we don't think about the humanness of our design, then we're missing the entire point of actually wanting to be included in the kind of occasion.
Nice. Well, if you're joining us later or just tuned in, joining Gavin and I today is Jomaree Pinkard with Hella Cocktail, and I have the link earlier in here, but I'm going to throw it up here. If you're listening and not watching, it's Hella, Hella cocktail.co. And I do want to ask you another question about Hella before. I want to save some time for Included CPG, which is, again, if you're listening, it's INCLUDEDCPG.com. I want to save some time to talk a little bit about that. So here you are, 10, 15 years, give or take, into this thing. Biggest learning you had, and or biggest mistake that you had, if you could wave that wand and say do over again, what would it be?
Yeah. I would say I'll go backwards. The biggest mistake, which I don't think we have control over, is timing. Jesus Christ, right? That timing piece is so important to like what success looks like, from the outside and from the inside. We're early to everything, which is just like, we're inspired, right? So like, to make new products is in our design and think through what the consumer is asking us about. And to be on that cutting edge is super fun, but oftentimes like we're too early, right? And so I'd say like timing is the biggest insight that we can't control, but we understand, we're aware of it. We just can't do anything about it. We can't be like, well, don't launch it or don't do it or don't try it. We're like, that's not in our design, right? So if we were other individuals, maybe we win or lose on that, right? The biggest win, oh man, is the fact that I think at the end of the day, I have two, and plus more. I have two, but at the core, I have two more brothers. I come from a family of three brothers, and I have two more, right? So like the fact that we went through the journey, like all of it. When we started with three bachelors running around the streets of New York City, right? And now I think we have together like 7 kids. You know what I mean? So like Tobin's son, when I first met him, peed on me. I was like, that was dope. Like, record that. Take a picture of this pee on me because, you know, he's going to be in the tribe when he's older. And I'm like, you know, so those kind of things to me are like the biggest wins out of it. It's like you built a friendship with folks that went deeper, and then you build a community around it, right? That like love what we do or love the product, like we made an impact. And when I got to see my daughter, Kaden, when she was like 1.5, cracker bitters and soda, I was like, yeah, right? Because now my daughters all drink it. They're like, bitters and soda, like all the other stuff is cool. Like, can I get a ginger ale, Dad? But if you have it in the refrigerator, I want a bitters and soda. I'm like, you know what? I'm done, right? Like game over. Like I won, right? In that vein. So I would say those are the two things that like, I know people want to hear KPIs, they want to hear exits, they want to hear, I'm like, yeah, we're winning. We're all right.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
I had a quick question. So like you were early with all this stuff. Like I feel like if you just launched this stuff like 5 years ago with the Hi-O's of the world and all the non-alc athletic brewing, all because I feel like you would have killed it because it would have been perfectly. But like when you're kind of going on the up and up, like some of these categories didn't have like I think of Whole Foods in the natural organic space. Like I feel like you almost would have had a difficult time figuring out which buyer to actually present this to, right? Because grocery now probably has quite a bit of these mixers in line and inset in the grocery section, but I'm guessing you're probably talking to the specialty buyers from the category management side of things.
Listen, I can never forget. I was building out mock-up NA sets and say put it in between spirits and what I was like, it's right here. It goes on both sides. Like you can use it non-alc. It's gonna be used in alc. Like trust me. Everyone was like, beat it, scrap. And I was like,
yeah, they're probably like, this needs to be White Claw space or whatever, right? Because
we were relegated to the tonic water set everywhere. And I was like, I mean, it's cool, but like nobody gets to like, what's that, right? What do we do with it? And if it tastes like tonic water, nobody wants to buy it for itself, right? And so like, you know, you to a point, timing, right? Like you're right. We were watching the other companies like, come on already, let's go to work. And so we were also part of the foundation of AMBA, the kind of non-alcoholic association. So we were like trying to do the work, but we were so far in front that, you know, we got relegated to certain spots if we even got the business at all, right? Because the set didn't exist. And we're like, well, are you going to build one? I swear it's going to happen. I promise you. And it's like, you know, so yeah, it was super early. And we commend the brands that came through and are crushing it because that's what's supposed to happen. You know?
How many times were you told no? Just for like the audience out there,
like no in general in life, or for like a product line, like
for just for hella in general, because I think that's the thing is like so many people, like I've got a buying background, so I've got a pretty good idea of how early you were, and it's just like you probably were told no like 90% of the time, I would guess.
I got told so. I mean, and I'm still getting told no today, right? I'm like, so we're not in the set. So we're part of the front. They're like, whatever. Like, it doesn't show up in Nielsen. I'm like, of course it doesn't show up in Nielsen. Like, we can't because we're not part of the machine because we're always in the back of that line because we were so early, right? So we got the first 2 no's when the category didn't exist. And then all the other brand players came in super capitalized that we didn't get any of that love, right? We didn't get any of that. Like, I remember you from back then. You did call it, right? We didn't get any of that stuff. And so, like, I would say, like, the biggest, the difference between like us being a huge company and like a middle market company is all the no's we still get, right? Because it doesn't show up in spins or in IRR in big places because we do a ton of food service. We do a ton of on-premise. We do a ton of, you know, Southern Glazers and Fedway, all the out distributors. None of that shows up in reporting. So when you look at the numbers, you're like, it's not in retail. And we're like, you know what? It's cool. We'll wait again and we'll see what happens. So for all you buyers out there, the bitters and soda is still popping. Let's get to work.
I will cut this for you. I want to preface this like a lot of CPG founders, like some of them aren't patient. You guys are patient and persistent, and I commend you guys on that.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we've got a question, Robert wants to hear a little bit more about how your NFL consulting work helped with the networking you to get exposure.
It's a good question. I would say the only thing that the NFL Network has in kind of concert with what we do over at Hella is the ability to understand who the end customer is and what they really want, right? So like, there's no connectivity between the NFL and connective tissue or marketing or amplification or any of those things, because I don't, until recently, maybe don't even think they deal in alcohol or tangential. Plus, that wasn't like where I worked at. What I did at the NFL was in a group called player development, and in that group, very similar, like we were trying to figure out how to help players off the field in their personal development, right? So it's a lot of the same thing we're talking about: education, who's the customer, where do they show up in the world, how do they talk to youth, how do they educate around the non-football, being the carrot. And so the insight again was really about how do we get to the end customer navigating like non-traditional means, right? So like that will be the through line that I would say brought me, or that I still utilize, that was from the NFL that I kind of borrowed, but also like thought through, because the NFL's been around for quite some time.
Nice. And you see a comment from, I'm sure, an old friend of yours, Sean. He wants to know when you're making bitters again.
Bitters are being made right now. They're always being made. We got tons of them. You know, and the beautiful thing about bitters is they have like an infinite shelf life. Think vodka, they're like 48, 49% ABV. So they last forever.
Nice. All right. So let's talk about Included CPG. What is it? How did it start? Where are you at? How do people get involved? Go for it.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, 6 years ago now, 2020, pre-COVID, pre-George Floyd, we just were like, man, we don't understand how to navigate this works. And like we just talked about, all the things we're talking about were like, wow, right? Like we don't come from it. If you didn't come from it, like it was hard to navigate. And so myself, Ryan Pintado, Nona Lim, Sarah Wallace, Richa Gupta, Clara Pay, Victoria Ho were just like, we should do something about it. Like we felt like the minority founders, the underrepresented founders just couldn't catch a break, right? Just like didn't make, again, this pre-George Floyd. And so we just said to ourselves, we should just band together and figure out a place that we can like ask the question of like, how do you actually get the yes, right? To the point, like, how do you get it? Like, what are we missing? We got the right product, we got the market fit. Maybe we don't have the Nielsen data, but emerging brands, what are we missing? I thought this was the goal, was to bring in new brands or bring in emerging or bring in interesting new things. None of us are getting in space the way that we think we should. But we're watching everyone else around and we're like, they know so-and-so. They know so-and-so. They're connected to so-and-so. And we're like, oh, shit. So in that way, we just said to ourselves, like, let's just create a space to talk about it. And we did. And what it's morphed into over the years is that as more and more entrepreneurs of color started to feel like they were on the outside of something, said, can we be part of this system, which was undefined at that time, right? And so we said, yeah, this is it. Just come on in. And then COVID happened. It was like, and then George Floyd happened. It was like everyone felt like the energy of like, shit, I want to belong somewhere. I have nowhere where I need to go. And I think people were scared, right? They were like, I don't feel safe having conversations in the kind of like broader ecosystem. I don't feel like I can answer that question on a panel if I'm asked to. And so like we just said, you know what? This is a confidential space. There's no recorders. There's no AI. There's no bots. Nothing's allowed, right? Just so you can like bare your soul. And so I think the community continues to feel like a space that people can do that. And all members are included, just so you know, like what we didn't include, and it's super important, as most people think, included is DEI. Cool, think that if you want, but really what included is about is centering the conversation and narrative around underrepresented founders, because the rest of the world is not, right? So it's about the lens that you use to apply the infrastructure, the thinking, the experience, not that other people are not included to it. So if you're not underrepresented, you're more than welcome to hang out with us, right? It's just that the lens will be like, okay, from my POV of how I experience the world versus fitting into a different world, which is the world we live in, which is fine because that's what it is. But like everyone's experience it's not shaped that way, right? And so we just tilt the lens, just so it's super clear of what Included CPG is all about. But what we do now is we have three kind of like pillars, if you will, that were born out of confidentiality and like a promise to help. And it's really about access, amplification, and advocacy. And so what we do in Access is we partner mainly with your Fancy Foods, your Informers and New Hopes, your BevNets of the world, and we try our best to like pull in our brands in a space that they either don't know exists or they don't have access to it, right? And so we bring in cohorts of emerging brands that we think fit the footprint, and we get them, you know, their retail readiness and get them ready for a show, and like let them and help them show up in those moments, right? So that a buyer can say yes, right? Because now they're on the platform where it happens, but you wouldn't know that. You might not know that it exists, and you might have the resources to do it. And so all those places also help us with the resources, right? And you say, here's a free booth, or here's a free flight, or here's a hotel, or here's some of the other platform mechanics that like you can't afford the 20 grand to show up at Expo. So Expo says, here's 10 booths for you. Like you figure out who fits in them, right? So Access is one pillar that we use. Access also has a digital component where we bring in growth partners, distributors, retailers, and so like peel the onion back. Like, how do we win on shelf? Like, what's the bottleneck that we're missing here? Tell us what it is in like layman's terms. Like, don't give us the panel chat. Give us like the real deal so that we can like really understand it. And so that's kind of like the Access program, very, very briefly speaking. And then we have amplification. We partner with this amazing PR firm called Starter Co. And they help us tell stories, right? They tell the included story, but then other underlying brand stories given occasions and moments and roll-ups and wrap-ups around whatever's going on in the world that makes sense for the brands in the included membership. And the last thing is advocacy. Most brands are super scared or timid about speaking out because they don't want to get relegated to like the list where you can't say something about, you know, retailer X or retailer Y or distributor X or distributor Y. It's like, okay, we can go on your behalf as a collective and say, the included members have a question about DEI and Target. Tell us what you got to say, right? Because no one brand's like going to do that because they're like, I don't want to get cut from the shelf, but I have these damn questions, right? And so like, I think we try to use our collective self as advocates. I have a suspicion that sometimes when I get my notes, they come from other designs, but like, it is what it is, right? Someone's got to do the work. But like, that's what Included is all about right now. And allies and advocates, anyone who wants to join and help us, like again, recenter some of the narrative when it makes sense is welcome.
How do they join? And then how many members do you guys have?
So, right. So in the one filter that we have is that Included, because we're trying to solve for confidentiality and a little bit of safe space, it's mainly relegated to the founder or the CEO or the principal or the head person of the whatever it is, whatever the entity type is, right? It's a full ecosystem play. So the maker, as is everywhere else, is the center, right, so to speak. But we have distributors, we have investors, we have merchandisers, we have the digital arms, everyone who wants to be part of it. We have over 800 members now. We're all founders. We're not solving for 50,000 members, which is cool in its own regard. We have our Slack channel, we have emails, we have spaces like that. But 800 plus members and growing. And every time we show up and do an event or show up somewhere, more members come and hang out.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to ask before we hop off in 5 or 6 minutes is, you obviously have so much knowledge and experience because you wore all these hats. Did you have a mentor that helped you through all this, or did you really lean on your co-founders and your brothers in arms, so to say?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say that I have one mentor who says that I can't call him that, so I won't. I'll just tell him who he is, but I can't call him a mentor because he won't allow me to. And then yes, I think the rest of it is like learned, right? Like you've learned, like wait, what tell me something about, right? Like give me the 2 cents on it so that I can put it together. And you kind of like build a collage out of like what's right, what's wrong, what works for you, what doesn't. But my main guy, his name is Jack Belcito. We met playing hoops at the gym years and years ago. Had no idea that we call him Snapplejack at the gym. And I had no idea we called him Snapplejack back then, but he was the president of Snapple back then. Played for a decade. Played hoops, ran around, he passed me the ball, I would score, he'd pass it to me again, I'd score. It was kind of like that. And so, we built this friendship, and I was like, well, dude, why did they call you Snapplejack? Like, what the hell, right? And finally realized like, and I was like, I do this other thing on the side that's much smaller, nobody cares about. And he was like, yeah, come to the office and chit chat. Let's just talk. And we started to do that every so often. And so like, to me, I'd be like, so Jack, he'd be like, Jomaree, don't over productize because it's exponential inventory management versus linear. I was like, yeah, I thought that when I did the math, but like, thank you, right? So he was really my pressure check against any like innovation stuff that we were like thinking that was far down the road. I'd be like, does that make sense? I feel right, you know. So he was the first person to taste like iteration 1 or 2 of the bitters and soda, right? I was like, yo, taste this and tell me if it rhymes with good. And so like, you know, he's been, but I said he'll say, you know, I'm not your mentor because he doesn't feel like it's been block and tackle X. And I was just like, you know, theory. Anyway, that's my guy.
Love
That's
that.
awesome.
I love that. Well, I I have to make sure I think you have some interest in Canada here. Robert Cogan owns a distribution company in the Greater Toronto area. It services Toronto and Detroit, Windsor, that area, and so you might want to connect with him if you're not already.
Okay.
I think you probably saw the comment from Kenny. He said he has to jump for a meeting, but he wanted to thank you for sharing and said your energy is amazing. Putting a bow on this thing, Jomaree, anything you want to leave the audience with? If somebody wants to get in touch with you, the easiest way to do so, go for it.
If you want to get in touch with me, definitely hit me on the LinkedIn. It's Jomaree Pinkard. Super simple, straightforward. I'll be the only one there, I promise. Shout out to Mom Dukes for that. And yeah, I don't know if I have any nuggets, but like if you love this space and you love what you're doing, you're going to find a way to make it work. And I think, you know, the three of us here are examples of like when you love something, like it just sticks. You can't even help it if you wanted to. So like if that's you, like welcome to the community. If you've been here for a long time, stay down. Like what's up?
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. I know when I talked to you in December about coming on, you immediately said yes. It took us a minute to get this happen, but very, very grateful for your time today. Gavin, anything on your end, closing this thing up?
No, I'm immediately going to go to the store and get some 24-pack waters. So everybody stay safe if you're in that vicinity of the snowstorm. Thank you so much for coming on and enlightening us, because I think it was very, very, very insightful.
Make sure you get some bitters for those waters, by the way. Come on.
Bitters and sodas. Go. Make it happen.
Awesome.
Go.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
We'll see you
fellas.
next week. Take care.
It's a pleasure.